And welcome back to the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis. Next to me, as always, is my beautiful co-host, Laraib. And we are finally here, Laraib, to break down week one of the NFL season. It just feels so good to be back. We can finally get into these games that matter. Preseason is a bunch of hogwash that no one really cares about. People put way too much stock into it. We don't. We're sharp. But now we finally get in to some real NFL action. We're filming this on Wednesday night, probably posting it Thursday morning at the time you're listening to this. So we're getting into all 16 games of this NFL slate. Now, if you are new here, what we do, we like to highlight our 6 to 8 favorite matchups of the week, really dive into those games, and then we kind of speed round the rest. But a lot of all these games week one, all these teams have optimism except for the Saints. All these teams have big goals this season. We really don't know what we're going to see from some of these teams. You might have a Commanders type leap out of a team that we really don't know what to expect from. So, a lot of really interesting stuff to get into this week. Larav, anything you want to say before we hop into these picks?
Yeah, the lines are going to be a little wonky this week. Like you said, the NFL and Vegas, the house is going to be adjusting to a lot of the moves that
This is
a
when you
bunch of
make your
teams
money.
made. Exactly, there's a lot of money to be made this week with new head coaches in town, defensive coordinators leaving, quarterbacks in new places. So it's going to be interesting to see. Week one every year is going to be the hardest to predict, and so whoever can win this week will have a huge leg up.
Yep.
I think I've won the regular season past 3 seasons in a row, so I'm not worried about any of this stuff. This is the easy part for me. So let's go ahead and get into the first game. We have the Cowboys without Micah Parsons going to Philadelphia to play the reigning champions in the Eagles. Eagles favored by a whole 7.5 points. Which way are you leaning, Lewis?
Yeah, I'm leaning towards the defending champs in this one, Larav. It's new season, right? So it's like where do you start when you evaluate teams in a brand new season? And I kind of had I wouldn't say tried and true because there still are crazy upsets and things, but what are the biggest changes? What are the biggest turnover? And like what can you rely on? What is something that, through and through, this will translate season to season? For me, it's offensive and defensive line play. It's coaching, quarterback combo, and just the cohesion between the two. And then all the, changes, everything else, the flashy fantasy players and everything, that doesn't mean much to me. I'm a trenches type of guy, all right, Larob? And when I look at this game, I mean, it's a clear mismatch in the trenches on both sides of the ball. I mean, Eagles really bring back almost the same exact offensive line as they had last year. They lose Mekhi Becton to the Chargers, but besides that, you still have Landon Dickerson, Jordan Mailata, you have Lane Johnson, just all these studs in that offensive line that without Micah Parsons, it's really hard to see how they're going to be able to get a consistent pass rush. I do like Kenny Clark as just a nice interior force, but bringing him in a week before the year starts, new defensive scheme. Um, you have Eberflus as a new defensive coordinator over there in Dallas. You go ahead, you extend Duron Bland, you get Trevon Diggs a year removed from the ACL surgery. So I expect those two to have better years. But a lot of what those guys feasted off in the past was that pass rush affecting the quarterbacks, and they are able to gamble and make big plays. Last year or last time we saw the Cowboys, the really impactful, formidable defense, it wasn't really based off the yards. They were in the middle of the pack in terms of yards allowed and EPA, but they led the league in turnovers. That's where they really made a huge difference. But without that game changer, Micah Parsons and a legitimate pass rush, I just think this team's middle is going to get exposed. And when you have a team like the Eagles really bring back most of the offense, big question mark losing Kellen Moore, offensive coordinator. But the Eagles' offensive coordinator has been a revolving door ever since Jalen Hurts has been the quarterback. So if anyone is in a position to adjust to a new offensive system, offensive scheme, it is Jalen Hurts in this offense. So I expect them establish the running game early. Saquon full off season to get back to full shape. So I don't worry about the wear and tear game one. I think he's going to have a great game. They didn't ban the tush push, so that's still going to be there on short yards situations. And it's really hard for me to see a big advantage this Dallas team has over Philly. Do you see any way the Cowboys could make this a close game, Laura?
Well, the addition of George Pickens from the Steelers to have two alphas in maybe not the biggest game out of George Pickens in this one,
Oh,
to
okay,
have,
okay.
the to have just a huge explosion from Dak Prescott, because this Eagles secondary list, it is still young. I mean, those guys that they brought in, the rookies last year, played to an extremely high level, but still they're young guys. They defeated Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl, so Dak Prescott on opening night doesn't seem like the biggest challenge. But leave it to the Cowboys to trade Micah Parsons, and then a week later go on the road and beat the Eagles in prime time. And so that is something that could happen. I expect this game to be a lot closer. But I just think, Brian, the one thing I haven't seen people talking about is Brian Schottenheimer being the head coach of this Cowboys team. He was just randomly selected, wasn't one of the cream of the crop guys who we thought would go to
Hey,
this
he
team.
was not getting hired by anyone else, Jerry.
So just a lot of questionable choices. But I just think this Eagles team, they might be a little Super Bowl hungover. I know Jalen Hurts, he will be locked in, but everyone else, a little questionable, winning their first ever Super Bowl. I'm gonna say they win this game at 31-28. The Cowboys' fourth worst rushing defense last year. I think Saquon has a massive game, and the Eagles win a close one.
Yeah, there's an opportunity here for a backdoor cover. Like you mentioned, young secondary. You lose CJ Gardner-Johnson and Darius Slay in the offseason. Bring in, rookie Andrew Makuba, who's had some flashes in the preseason. But this still is a very young, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean in their second year. So there is an opportunity. Eagles get up to a big lead, rest on their laurels a bit. Cowboys, big time strikes to George Pickens. Probably gets like 3 touchdowns in the second half alone. We hope. But I don't see this being that close to the game. I have the Eagles in this one, 31-18. I just think that they're really going to dominate the trenches all game long. And Dak Prescott, without a run game, really struggles as an offensive engine, that we think he can be. He's definitely more of a complementary player. And I like some of the young pieces on this offensive line. Tyler Booker, the guard out of Alabama. But Tyler Smith, great offensive guard, but I just don't trust this offensive line, especially against this Eagles young defensive front. So I am going with the Eagles 31-18. Now, Laraib, let's move on over to Friday night football. Hello, Friday night lights in Brazil. We have the Kansas City Chiefs. Technically a home game for the Chargers, but they don't have any home games in the regular season. They don't have fans, and we'll be alluding to that every single home game this season. Um, but it is Chiefs opening up as a 3.5 point favorite in Brazil, Larab. Big changes this offseason. Jim Harbaugh's second year under his belt. You're a big Chargers guy. What are the keys to the Chargers taking victory in this one?
Well, they showed us who they want to be from the draft, right? They draft Omarion Hampton with their first pick in the first round. And it looks like they want to establish this ground and pound offense that
Getting the ball out of Justin Herbert's hands.
Greg Roman is known for. The big issue was Rashawn Slater goes down. He's done for the season. The good thing is you have Big Joe Alt move over to take over his spot, but then you have Trey Pipkins move over to the right side. So, at least you have Joe Alt protecting Justin Herbert's blind side. That's going to be one good thing instead of Trey Pipkins. But it's going to be establishing the run. But against this Chiefs defense, who is tried and trusted, we already know, they don't play for the regular season. They don't play for the clicks anymore. They are playing for Super Bowls. And in this game, I just think this is going to be a your typical AFC West showdown. Chargers Chiefs, low scoring. The Chargers are going to have every opportunity to win it. And I just think this early in the season, just early in year two for Harbaugh, I think they come up short once again. The big thing for me is going to be the quality of the field. That was a little questionable last time in this Brazil game. And for the Chiefs, the big thing for them this offseason was shoring up their offensive line. They draft Jonah Williams. We'll see what he can do. For the Chargers, you lose Joey Bosa. A lot of pressure on Khalil Mack. Asante Samuel Jr. is gone in this game. I just think there's too many holes for this Chargers defense. Patrick Mahomes with plenty of time. Unfortunately, we'll have to lean Chiefs in this one.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be a big test, really schematically for this Chiefs offense, because you go into this year, the past few years, Patrick Mahomes has kind of been forced, whether by injuries or just by talent overall, into more of a game manager, more of a check down, take the easy yards, play the long game. Especially the way defenses are playing him, more too high safeties, trying to take away the deep ball that he's been so great at his whole career. So for me, it's about this Chargers defense discipline. Jesse Mentor, defensive coordinator, has been pretty effective over there in Los Angeles. So really, it's can the Chiefs establish a run game? Can they get solid, consistent movement on first, second down to allow the Chiefs to open up the passing game a little bit more? Xavier Worthy entering year two, he's a big explosive play guy. Hollywood Brown, coming off the chest injury and weird stuff last year. This is the healthiest Travis Kelce full off season, noisy off season for sure. So really, it's what is this Chiefs offense going to look like this year? Are we just going to wait around for Rashid Rice to get back to really add some juice to this offense, or are we going to continue the slow, methodical, death by a thousand cuts? Don't end every drive with a kick, PAT, field goal, or punt. Um, but ultimately, that's what I'm excited to see is how the Chiefs offense is going to look this year. Again, Matt Nagy coming back, everything staying the same. Steve Spagnuolo, Matt Nagy. Again, for me, it's just the trench difference in this game. Chris Jones, George Karlaftis, manning that defensive front for the Chiefs. I do have some questions about the secondary of the Chiefs. You lose Justin Reed this offseason, replacing it with some younger guys, but they do a good job drafting. So I do lean Chiefs in this game. I just think the experience and this unfamiliar territory, Brazil, I just give it to the Chiefs, who played in a lot of weird games, a lot of big games. The Chargers, Justin Herbert has to prove he can win a big game in his whole career. He hasn't done it once. So I am leaning Chiefs in this one. I do agree with you. I think it's going to be lower scoring. I'm going to go Chiefs 24 to Chargers 17.
And I'm going to go Chiefs 23-20. A late field goal wins it for the Chiefs, and the Chargers taste defeat once again at the hands of Patrick Mahomes. But that's not going to be the case all season long. But let's
Mm.
go ahead and move on to another highlighted game that we have. The Detroit Lions, after winning their division last season, go to Lambeau to play the Packers with the newly acquired Micah Parsons. The Packers favored by 1.5 points, even though they were 1-5 against the NFC North last year. And I think this is a huge test. Week one, dare I say, must win
Mm.
for the Packers with Jordan Love fully healthy. I think they have a lot of good things going for them here, especially against the Lions team, who are going to have a lot of new faces at the coordinator position, like we talked about in our predictions episode. It's just going to I just want to see what they look like first. And then for the Packers, we already know they've established that identity with Josh Jacobs last year. You draft Matthew Golden with your first round pick this year. I think Jordan Love has a lot of tools at his disposal. Micah Parsons, will see how much he really gets to play. They're talking about some lower back issues with him. He didn't really practice much at all this past offseason as well. So we'll see how they look. But I really like the Packers in this game.
Yeah, for me, the biggest, X factor in this game is Aiden Hutchinson. What does he look like coming off that freak injury last season? He was rumored that if they were in the Super Bowl, he might come back, but then you see these offseason videos in like March, or he's just running all funny, and it was like, all right, there was no shot. But now, full off season, how does he look? Is he still going to be that game wrecker who was on track to lead the league in sacks last year, who was just flying out of the gates? Especially, new defensive coordinator, new offensive coordinator. How is this scheme going to look? I still, I like the secondary. Kirby Joseph coming back, Carrion Arnold in his second year. How is he going to look against this kind of question mark offensive, weaponry for the Packers offense? Matthew Golden, first year rookie, like you mentioned. What is he going to look like in his debut? This game being in Green Bay week one makes me lean Detroit in this, just because you get them early in the season. You have to take advantage. It's not the frozen tundra yet. It's a nice, cool 65 degrees in Green Bay. That's my football weather right there. I'm not playing in no damn snow. Um, but we know Jared Goff thrives in these moments. I just think overall continuity of the roster, Lions team, the way they went out last year, they have a lot to prove. The biggest question for me, and it kind of works out short term against Green Bay, because, this Lions offensive line, Frank Ragnow retiring, Kevin Zeitler moving on to the Titans, I believe. So you have a lot of new interior parts, right? So you worry about the interior of that offensive line, but now, no Kenny Clark to worry about on the inside. So you should be able to run the ball effectively. And against this Packers defense, how aggressive do they want to be going at Jared Goff? How aggressive they want to be, like you mentioned, with Micah Parsons, right? So there's still a lot of stuff up in the air for them to decide. I like Detroit in this one. I think Dan Campbell is just going to get them ready. It's going to be a really good, probably one of my favorite games of the week here. But I think, like we mentioned in our season predictions, which if you haven't watched, go check it out. Why not? Like the video, subscribe, whatever. But like I mentioned, I have the Lions still narrowly winning this division, even though I have the Packers winning the Super Bowl. So I still do like this Packers team. I just think it's going to take them time over the course of the year. What is Jordan Love going to look like early in the year? Is he going to struggle coming out the gate like we've seen him in the past, or full healthy offseason? He had a little bit of a thumb issue with his non-throwing hand. How does that affect him? But I think it'll be a little bumpy out of the gates for the offense. I like Detroit in this one in a good game. I'm going to go 27-24 game winner by Matt Gay. Wait,
Matt Gay's, I'm not sure if Matt Gay's the kicker
who's
for
the
Detroit.
kicker? I don't know kickers
Jake
anymore.
Bates, I believe.
Jake Bates,
Very young kicker in the
UFL
league.
guy.
Uh, Very solid. But he will not be making the game-winning kick. It will be the kicker for the Packers. I forgot his name as well. Longtime kicker for the Jaguars. And Brandon McManus. Shout out Brandon
Yeah,
McManus.
McManus.
Mid-season acquisition last year because Carlson, he was dog shit. I think the two run games are going to be heavily featured as a quarterback try to figure out extenuating circumstances. I like Joe's in this one. Give me the Packers to win 28-26.
All right, moving on next to our highlighted games. We have the Houston Texans traveling to Los Angeles to face the Rams. Rams open as a 3.5 point favorite at home. The big thing in this game is really for me these defenses against these revamped offensive lines. And revamped might be a generous way to put it for the Rams sense. Starting right tackle, uh, injured, not good to start the year. And especially, you have your concerns with Matt Stafford dealing with this back spasms all off season long. How is he going to come out of the gates? You'd like to think he's probably at his healthiest. Sean McVay doesn't play any of his guys in the preseason, so we really don't know. But he was cleared full to go Sunday last week. So that is the plan. Matt Stafford should be good to go. And he's tough. He's played through a lot of injuries in his career. But how is that going to look week one? You'd theorize this would be the healthiest he looked, but this is a hell of a test right out of the gates against this Texans defensive line with Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson, who had spectacular years last year, just wrecking offensive line. So it's going to be a really big test for me in this one. But flipping it over to the other side, I think is the worst matchup is this Rams defensive line going up against this strange Texans offensive line.
Shout
Um,
out Stone Forsythe.
Yikes. Yeah, if you listened to us last year, if Stone Forsythe was brought up, your team was not doing well. Yeah, I mean, just total reshuffling. Trading Laremy Tunsil away was a bold decision given the question marks offensive line, and we saw how much that really affected Stroud last year. So Stroud coming in, obviously no Tank Dell, no Stephon Diggs, a lot of youth in that receiver room. Jaden Higgins, no Joe Mixon to start the year, dealing with a foot injury. So a lot of difference in the offensive skill positions. I think it's definitely going to take some time adjusting to. And this Rams defensive line is just stacked. I mean, Jared Verse, Braden Fisk in their second years, Kobe Turner has always just been a monster in that interior. You figure like, oh, it might take him a few years to figure out the departure of Aaron Donald, how all that's going to work. But they've, assembled a really good defensive line that caused a lot of chaos for teams at the end of last year. So there's no reason for me to think they won't, replicate that production going into this year. And I just think the decided advantage and offensive versus defensive lines, I lean this Rams defensive front against that Texans offensive line. So I think it's going to be a low scoring game. You think of the caliber of these offenses in the past. I just don't think you're going to get quite that. Now, a big X factor for me is what does Devontae Adams look like in this Rams offense? Puka obviously has been the favorite of Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford he loves his guys. He works out with them all the time. We saw his connection with Cooper Kupp was dynamic a few years ago. And what is that relationship going to be like with Devontae Adams in this point of his career, especially against this awesome secondary of the Texans? Um, it really is going to be a fun defensive battle of a game, but I'm going to lean Rams here.
Yeah, you and I both were discussing, everyone's going to highlight this game. They're going to talk about Nico Collins. They're going to talk about Puka Nacua. They're going to talk about Devontae Adams. But I think you and I both agree this game is going to be decided and won by these two defenses. And if I had to pick one, I'm leaning towards the Texans. Like you mentioned, Daniil Hunter, Will Anderson both had 11 plus sacks this year, on top of Matt Stafford dealing with a back injury. I know he's a tough guy, but you just imagine if he takes one of those big shots, he's going to be feeling very uncomfortable in this game, and especially when you have Derek Stingley on the outside, along with Kamari Lassiter Jr. In his second year, who played outstanding. I think this Texans defense can be one of the best, if not the best, units inside the whole NFL. That's why I have to lean the Texans in this one. CJ Stroud with newly acquired offensive coordinator Nick Haley coming over from the Los Angeles Rams from last year. I really like what the Rams do. And another guy coming over from that McVay coaching tree. I really think he's going to have some good things dialed up for CJ Stroud and try to mitigate what a bad offensive line, because it was the same thing for the Rams last year, right? A mid to below average offensive line, and the Rams figured their way around that, and that was a lot of Nick Haley and his design. If you can implement some of that in Houston, I really like Nico Collins this year. A huge monster bomb from him in this game, even though it's gonna be a little bit lower scoring. I think the Texans win 16 to 13.
And I have the Rams winning this one at 20-13. Low scoring game. There's going to be some question marks, but I think both these teams in the long term, they'll be just fine. It's going to be a fun game. But let's move on now to Sunday night football. Rob, this is the one that everyone had circled once the schedule came out. It is the Baltimore Ravens traveling to Buffalo to face the Bills. Bills slight favorite at 1.5 points at home. These two heavyweights have been battling for second place in the AFC the past 5 years, you know, just trying to get over that edge. Obviously, we saw the last time these two teams played, it came down to a Mark Andrews drop on a 2 point conversion that just broke the Ravens back at the end of last season. So I'm excited to see how the Ravens are going to respond. Laura, I want to ask you more of a philosophical question. Who do you think needs this game more? I know it's a very ESPN, type of question, but coming like these two teams, very high expectations. Obviously, the regular season, both these teams are going to be playoff division winners, but who do you think needs to get this win more, just from a feel good standpoint?
I'm gonna lean needs it more. I'm gonna lean Bills. You have the reigning MVP in Josh Allen. You had a successful offseason. You're bringing Joey Bosa. You were right there in the AFC Championship against the Chiefs, and a couple plays go your way. You're on the way to the Super Bowl. So I feel like all the eyes are on the Bills here at home. Week one, you beat this Ravens team last year in the playoffs. And what was it? A spectacular game. I feel like all eyes are on them. Lamar Jackson, after not winning the Super or the MVP last year, I feel like this is the Ravens' year. And not a lot of people are talking about the way they've constructed their roster. No one really talks about MG Green from Marshall. Not a lot of people talk about Jair Alexander, who's been banged up the past couple of years. But this Ravens defense, Lewis, was playing spectacular last season, minus the first couple of starts. I think here on the road against this Bills team, they are out for blood. I think Lamar Jackson. I I mean, we say this every year that they're both Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, they're right there. This is going to be their year. I just have a feeling that this is going to be the year for the Ravens. I have a feeling we're going to be seeing this matchup once again deep in the playoffs in a couple of months' time. But I think the Ravens, they can lean on Derrick Henry. They can lean on their run defense a little bit. Josh Allen had to carry a lot of load for this Bills team last year. Let's see if he can do it again this year.
Yeah, I agree with where you're like thinking of in terms of the question I asked you. Like, I think the Ravens are going to want this more. But like, my thing is with them, it's hard to say because remember when these teams played in the regular season last year and the Ravens just crushed them. Derrick Henry ran all over them, no Matt Milano in that game, but he just ran all over them. And the Bills came out; they couldn't move the ball at all, and a few cheap touchdowns at the end. But it was Ravens domination. But still, it's kind of like what happened last year, right? The Ravens lose to the Chiefs in the postseason. In week one, they get to play them again, and they're all amped up. And then it comes down to the very end, and the Ravens can't get it done. And ultimately, you know, over the last 10 games against the Bills and the Chiefs, the Ravens are 3-7 against the rest of the league. They're over 85% winning percentage. So it's just about the getting over that mental hurdle, really getting off their season to a good start because, even last year they lose to the Chiefs in the opener and then immediately drop it the next one to the Raiders at home, which was like, what are we doing, guys? Now, obviously, they go on, they still get the 2 seed in the AFC, but I think the Bills need this one more. Just from a 2025, 2026 season perspective, you need to get off to a hot start. And I think the Bills, if they want to get that number one seed, the road to the AFC has never gone through Buffalo. Buffalo has not had the 1 seed. They've always been the 2 seed or the 3 seed. So if they want to get their season started off right, they need to win this game. And I think a lot of that is going to be on Josh Allen. Ultimately, this offensive line, the chemistry they had, this is probably one of the most like just put together teams in terms of just continuity. Like a lot of returning guys. They even they bring back Tre'Davious White onto the roster as secondary depth.
Jordan
But
Poyer's back too.
Jordan Poyer's back. Like obviously Sean McDermott likes his guys who fit his scheme, and I just think this is gonna be a really entertaining game. I really like a lot of the reports coming out of camp. And him, finding his connection with Keon Coleman. Expect Keon to be more of a featured X receiver down the field, and exciting to see how his matchup against Jair Alexander, the newly acquired, you know, Ravens corner from Green Bay. I thought he was good last year, just dealt with some injuries. So this Ravens team is stacked. It's loaded, but this game being in Buffalo, I think it's going to be a huge game for seeding down the line. And I think the Bills are going to win this one, Laraib, at home. I just think Josh Allen, this is going to be a really awesome game. I think it's going to be a higher scoring than people imagine. Um, but I am going with the Bills in this one, 34-31.
And I'm gonna lean the Ravens. You could honestly just flip a coin and tell me, oh, this team's gonna win this way, and I would have no reason to argue with you. I just think Lamar Jackson, he's angry after not winning MVP last year. And the Ravens win 31-28 after their rookie kicker, not Justin Tucker anymore, nails the game-winning kick.
That is a thing, Dop or whatever his name is. I'm not sure. Tyler Loop, excuse me. That is a big thing going in this year is this Ravens offense. They know, let's just get to the 40-yard line and we'll be fine. But now that's not the case anymore. So it's gonna be interesting to see how that affects just the psyche of this team, right?
Well, Tyler Bass hasn't had the greatest
Mm.
postseason kicking history himself, and so maybe these two teams won't be relying on their special teams in this one. But let's go ahead and move on to our final highlighted game, Lewis. Monday Night Football. The Minnesota Vikings are traveling to Chicago to play the Bears, and this is the game I think you and I can both agree. If we had question marks about all these other teams and what they're going to look like, these two teams right here are the question marks with rookie JJ McCarthy in his first ever start against year two, not Drake May, year two Caleb Williams, the most highly touted prospect to ever come to the NFL. This is going to be an insane game. And I'm leaning the Bears in this one. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. In JJ McCarthy's first start, I'm treating him as a rookie. Historically, rookies have not been good in their first ever starts. Look at Caleb Williams, somehow winning that game last year against the
Will
Titans.
Levis.
That will not happen in this one. I'll tell you that much. I think for the Bears, they have a lot of weapons on offense. Caleb Williams, I'm excited to see how he settles into the Ben Johnson scheme, or even on the other side of that, how Ben Johnson kind of filters Caleb Williams out of it if he's not playing well, how he designs his runs, how he designs his quick passes. This is going to be a very fun game to watch. How much can this Vikings defense continue to dominate? I think this is going to be a fantastic Monday night game.
The big thing for me in this game is this new Bears offensive line, right? It's like you bring in all these free agents over the past few years. Oh, Nico Collins, yep. You bring in these new free agents, and how is this? Because Ben Johnson wants to run the ball. That's what he's made his money on. With the Lions, that's where he succeeded at the highest level. So how is he going to be able to establish that running game with this new Bears offensive line against this very formidable Vikings defensive front, I think that's going to cause some issues because ultimately, what was the biggest problem last year? Caleb being off script, getting pressure in his face, and really just like a lot of third and longs. Caleb save us, and he wasn't able to. Um, so I think that's going to be an interesting thing. How effective will this running game be against the Vikings, who were one of the best rush defenses in the league last year? Shout out our boy Blake Cashman, new Minnesota Viking. He's going to definitely leave his imprint on this game. But I agree with you. I need to see it from JJ McCarthy before I believe it. This game in being in Chicago, I have to feel like if you're the Bears and you have legitimate expectations this season, this is the game that you really need to put your imprint and say, we're here, new coaching staff, new culture, new Caleb Williams, and we're going to win. I don't think it's going to be a very high scoring game. A big thing for me also is this new Dennis Allen led defense. Dennis Allen, as much hell as I gave him last year as the head coach, really good defensive schemer, good defensive game planner. He's going to get a lot of blitzes, a lot of pressure in McCarthy's face. So, how will the Vikings respond will be very interesting. But in this one, I'm leaning Bears. I'm going Bears 18 to Vikings 16.
And I'm leaning Bears 17-14. JJ McCarthy has the ability right here in this game to shock the NFL, put his stamp on why he was selected so highly by this Vikings team last year. And he could be the guy that we come out from that draft class and talk about, how great he was. But I just think in his first ever spot against this Bears team, who are hungry after their, midseason collapse last year, I think it's going to be too tall of a task for him.
And what's your score?
17-14.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for all of our highlighted games, Laraib. Now we get to go through the rest of this jumbo slate of week 1 in the NFL. Starting at the noon games, we have Tampa traveling to Atlanta. New Michael Penix, starting off this year as the new starting quarterback. Tampa favored by 1.5 points on the road. What are you leaning, Laraib?
Yeah, I'm leaning Bucks. I like the continuity. They lose Liam Cohen, but still they get to upgrade their passing coordinator to offensive coordinator. So not much change there. Chris Godwin out, but Emeka Egbuka, can he emerge as that number 2? I think Baker Mayfield cemented himself as a top 10. And this Falcons team, a lot of questions about Penix year 2. We know DL5 will be balling out, but how much can this Falcons team try to slow down this Bucks offense? I think the Buccaneers, with a little more firepower, win 27-24.
Yeah, I agree with you. I have the Bucks winning this game. Big thing for me to look out for is these two rookie edges, right? James Pierce, I can't remember the Georgia guy's name, Walker.
Jalen Walker.
Jalen Walker. Yeah, how are they going to look? Especially, no Tristan Wirfs. This is a good test for them to see if they're really ready for that next level in the NFL. So excited to see what they can do. But ultimately, Penix being at home, I think that's going to be a big offensive game, but I really need to see it more from the Falcons. So right now I'm going with the known commodity, and that is Tampa Bay Buccaneers 33-26.
Let's move on to another game from in the NFC South. We have the Cardinals going to New Orleans to play your Saints. This is going to be a barn burner for sure. What can Spencer Rattler look like with a fully healthy offense with, Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed and Alvin Kamara all out there against this young Cardinals defense? And then Kyler Murray, to start the year, he always starts off a little hot. Can he continue that streak against the Saints team who is tanking for Arch Manning? We're not exactly sure what the direction of this Saints team is right now. But for the Cardinals, we're going to talk about a couple of these guys coming up. This is kind of their, what do you got year? Where the leash is starting to get a little short on these guys. Are you the franchise guy or not? Can we, put our trust in you? Kyler Murray is one of those guys for me. And I think in this spot against a bad Saints team, he figures something out in the very least. I think they win 30-13.
Yeah, interesting thing to me is this line is actually 6.5 now. According to ESPN, just wanted to throw that out there. Oh wait, never mind. I forgot. No, but I'm also going with the Cardinals in this game. I mean, way too many unknowns. Yeah, I mean, I do like the Saints offensive line, but I think the Cardinals improved defensively. But like Rattler and Kellen Moore in their first game, I mean, you got to think Jonathan Gannon's going to throw the kitchen sink at this Saints offense. So I like the Cardinals. Kyler, I don't have much faith left in you, but you gotta beat the damn Saints. So I'm going Cardinals 33-12 in this game. Next game up, Rob, we have the Cincinnati Bengals traveling to Cleveland to face the Browns. Cincinnati opening up as 5.5 point favorite. Wake up, Cincinnati. You're playing the Cleveland Browns, quarterbacked by Joe Flacco. You cannot start the season 0-1. Last year, they opened up at home against the Patriots and Jacoby Brissett and Gerard Mayo, and they found a way to lose. You changed up the scheme this year. You're saying we're playing our starters in the preseason. We don't want to be caught sleeping. No big injuries on the offense that you have to going in the season with. You had the Trey Hendrickson drama and the Shamar Stewart stuff, but all that got resolved. You need to win this game to start your season and prove that you are a legitimate team. Because as you realized last year, if you're praying for teams to lose in week 18, that's not a sustainable way to make your mark. So Bengals need to win this game. I think they will win this game. I have them winning 36-10.
Yeah, I mean Zach Taylor, if he finds a way to lose this game,
I might fire him.
it would be
I'll
hard
do
to
it.
imagine a world where he continues as the head coach of this Bengals team. So yeah, I'm gonna agree the Bengals win this one. I'm gonna say 27-17. Shout out David Njoku. Give me
Shout
some
out.
garbage town points.
Yeah, all right, Laura, moving on to our next game. We have the Miami Dolphins traveling to Indy to face the Daniel Jones led Colts. Colts favored at home, 1.5 points. Um, this is such a bleh game for me. I mean, I don't have much faith in either team. All I know is week one, Tua, Tyreek, Devon Achane, these guys are all healthy. This offense should be good. I don't love this Colts secondary. I think there's still a lot of holes and question marks there. And then Daniel Jones in offense. What am I getting? I like this Miami defensive line. I think they'll do a good enough job against Jonathan Taylor in this game. So I have them as the slight underdog winning this one outright. I have the Dolphins winning 28-21.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. It's kind of puzzling to me why I understand why people are out on the Dolphins. But in a game like this, like you mentioned, when everyone's healthy, where you have Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, and Matthew Judon all on the defensive line against a crappy quarterback in Daniel Jones who could barely sustain his time as a starting quarterback for the Giants, couldn't sign the backup role in Minnesota, and now he's going to take over for Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis and throw to guys like Michael Pittman Jr. on the outside. It really doesn't move me. And then fully healthy offense for the Dolphins. I really like the Dolphins to win this one big, 31-17.
All right, Laraib, let's move on to our next game. We have the Las Vegas Raiders traveling to New England to face the Patriots. Patriots 2.5 point favorites at home. This is a really interesting game to me, Laraib. New head coach, new quarterback in Vegas, and Pete Carroll and Geno Smith. What are they going to look like? And then you have new head coach Mike Vrabel with year two Drake May. There's a lot of very exciting storylines in this game that I'm looking at, but ultimately it's this uh, this Raiders offense against this Patriots defense. Patriots defense, big question mark all of a sudden. Christian Gonzalez, questionable for this game with a lingering injury. So, without him, Jacoby Myers, new rookie that everyone really has a lot of faith in, and Torrey Horton, how are they going to look going into this season? So a lot of really interesting things to look at in this game. I'm excited to just watch this game because you mentioned, the question marks of the Bears and the Vikings. I have a ton of question marks on how both these teams are going to look and how that's going to really shape their futures going forward. But ultimately, I'm going to lean with the home team in this one. I like the Patriots. I just have more faith in their defense. Early on, I think defenses carry a lot of these games in the season. Offense is still trying to figure things out. New offensive lines coming together. I think this Patriots defense, with or without Christian Gonzalez, is still really good. Mike Vrabel's a damn good coach. And then, let's see how they run the ball against this not too great Raiders defense. So I have the Patriots winning this one 17-13.
Yeah, Mike Vrabel is going to scheme up this defense with or without Christian Gonzalez out there to a high level. And then, yeah, the big thing for me in this game is just going to be the Raiders and, their whole season outlook in this one with Pete Carroll, with Geno Smith. We both like them to, I think everyone likes them to be better than they were last year, but how much better, how much, how big of a leap can they take Brock Bowers, is he going to continue to be a monster like he was last season? But I just think the Patriots with Drake May in year two have a lot more to show me in this game. I like Vrabel a lot too. I think the Patriots win 23-17.
All right, Laraib, let's go on to our next one. We have the Pittsburgh Steelers traveling to New York in a quarterback revenge game. The New York Jets, that is. Pittsburgh favored by 2.5 points on the road. Laraib, which quarterback do you expect the bigger game from?
Uh, I mean, as much as it pains me to say this, I'm gonna say Aaron Rodgers is gonna have the better game. I think Jalen Warren is a better running back than Brees Hall. I think TJ Watt and the Steelers defense is way better than the Jets defense, and I think Mike Tomlin is a better coach than Aaron Glenn. And so, with all those factors combined, even if Justin Fields is a little bit better than Aaron Rodgers at this point, I think the Steelers find a way to win this game. This is gonna be an awful fucking game to watch, honestly in week one. You just you can just picture it now. The Steelers are going to kick 5 field goals
Oh.
and win this game. So I'm going to pick the Steelers 15-13.
Oh man, I could just see the red zone interception from a late push from the Jets, and just Justin Fields throws it into a tight window and ends the game 13-10. Yeah, ugly, ugly game. Cool storylines, obviously, with Justin Fields returning to Pittsburgh, Aaron Rodgers returning to New York. Um, but ultimately, it just, I guess, I like you. I have more faith in Rodgers as much as I don't want to. Excited to see Aaron Glenn. I think this Jets defense is going to be really good. They still have a lot of that talent when they had all the hype going into last season. So I think he's going to add a lot of energy to this defense. They're going to put up a really good effort. But I mean, this Steelers defense is going to do wonders on Jalen Hurts. So I have the Steelers reluctantly in this one, 13-10. But let's move on now to our next game. We have the New York Giants traveling to Washington to face the Commanders. Washington, a 6.5 point favorite at home. Jaden Daniels entering year two. Some new weapons, Debo Samuel, Laramie Tunsil on the offense. No reason to think this Commanders offense shouldn't be rolling to start the year. But Laura, my big thing is, what is this Giants offense going to look like? I feel like that's one of the more underrated storylines going into this league, or into this year, I should say, of how excited are we going to be for this offense? What do you expect from this New York offense?
Yeah, they're rolling out Russell Wilson to start, and you can't hate them for that because it would be a lot tougher if you threw Jackson Dart out there and then, try to bench him and put in Russell Wilson the other way around. So I think they're going to start off, a little mediocre. Let's see what they can do with Tyrone Tracy and Cam Scatterboo, running back tandem. But the big thing, of course, is going to be Malik Neighbors on the outside in his year two. I know everyone is expecting him to break out. It's just going to be hard to see, this Giants team, to get a good feel for them until we see Jackson Dart out there. A solid preseason outing for him, but it's going to be different. If there were a game you would want him to go in, it would be against this one, against this crappy Commanders defense, and I would have felt like it would have been a lot more entertaining. But still, I think Malik Neighbors, who was outstanding against the Commanders last year, this time around, I think he's still gonna have an outstanding game. It's just for the Commanders. I am a little bit lower on them than you are. Their defense just really does not move me. But you're just facing a shitty Giants team. But the big thing for me is that Giants defensive line: Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence. Those four
That's
guys can
stacked.
single-handedly win this game, this Giants team games throughout the entire season long. But for the Commanders, this is going to be it shouldn't be that too hard of a test for them against Russell Wilson. I like the Giants to cover, but I think the Commanders still win 24-20.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Giants are going to make this a very close, uncomfortable game, just given the strength of their defensive line. What's really going to swing it to me in the Giants' favor, or in the Commanders' favor, excuse me, is how are the Commanders going to really approach this rushing attack, right? You bring in, or you lose Brian Robinson, you have Eckler, you have Brian Krosky Merritt, the new rookie who showed some flashes. How are they going to be able to run the ball? Because that's going to be a huge thing, especially with Jaden's threat of being this dual threat RPO type of quarterback. You know, he opens up a lot for the running game, and you invest in the offensive line. And if you're going to try to beat this Giants defensive line, you have to establish the run just to get those pass rushers off their heels and really make them think, you know? So, and I have more faith in this Commanders offense to establish themselves than this Giants offense. But I agree with you. It's going to be a close divisional game. Something in my gut really thinks the Giants are going to play spoiler in week one, but I am going to go with the Commanders in this game, 21 to Giants 17. But let's move on down south, Laraib. We have the Carolina Panthers traveling to Jacksonville. Jacksonville opening as a 3.5 point favorite at home. Um, for me, Laraab, I really think I like the Panthers in this matchup. You know, I'm not a huge Bryce Young fan, but I like the identity they were starting to build towards the end of last season, really investing in that offensive line and into that running game, you know, and that opens up a lot because when Bryce Young was at his best, even in college, it was as a play action, getting out of the pocket, making big plays, and all of that kind of relies on this run game. And this Jaguars defensive front, you know, they have a lot of really good pass rushing names, Trayvon Walker, um, Josh Hines Allen. But overall, they don't really have a lot of beef in the middle. And this Panthers defense or offensive line has some studs. So if they're able to establish the run, you know, you're getting some guys back on the defensive end, J.C. Horn, Derek Brown, just, you know, difference makers. I think they can make life difficult on this new system with Jacksonville, Liam Cohen. So I think I like the Panthers in the upset in this one, Rob. I'm going to go Panthers 26 to Jaguars 20.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite games of the entire slate of week one.
Really?
I don't think there's going to be much, if any, defense
You're
played
a freak.
in this one at all. I really like these two young quarterbacks. Trevor Lawrence, another one of those guys. You know, what do you got? Your
Mm-hmm.
leash is getting a little shorter every year. Liam Cohen and his Duval is coming into Jacksonville. I
Duval.
like the way the Panthers ended the season last year. I like Trevor Lawrence and the weapons he has this year. I think this is going to be one of those games where you're watching Red Zone with the commercials on the side of the screen, and you know the Burger King Whopper Whopper comes up, and you know you see Travis Hunter go for a 60-yard touchdown, and then you know the McDonald's ad comes up, and you see Ted McMillan going for a 50-yard touchdown. I think there's going to be huge player potential in both these games. Defense, I don't want to hear anything about either one of these teams. I want to focus on the young quarterbacks, the weapons they have on the outside. This is going to be a fun game to watch, in my opinion. But I think the
Travis Hunter
Jaguars win.
debut.
I know, yeah, to see a lot of young guys that you like to see in this one, but I think the Jaguars win 31 to 28.
All right.
75-yard Cam Little field goal to win.
Hello. Hey, he knocked in a 70-yarder in the preseason. No one wants to talk about it, not even me. Um, but moving on now to the 3 o'clock slate, Laura, we have Cam Ward's debut at Denver. Denver opens as an 8.5 point favorite. You mentioned earlier quarterbacks, you know, usually rookies making their first start, not very good, and especially making your first start at Denver in the altitude against this very formidable Denver defense is just a awful spot to be in if you're Cam Ward in this new offense. Brian Callahan, this going to be a huge game. You know, establish like what's your identity this year. You know, you bring in some offensive line help. You know, you have Tony Pollard. You want to establish this run game. Bring in your dad as the offensive line coach. You know, what kind of offense do you want to run this year? But ultimately, this is just such a difficult test. It's gonna be really hard to gauge. If Cam Ward has a decent game, in my eyes, it'll be a great game because of how formidable I think this Broncos defense is. I don't think the Titans have a snowball's chance in hell of winning this game. I have the Broncos rolling 33 to 10.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and give Cam Ward a pass right now for
Yeah.
whatever experience he has in this game. I'm more focused on the Broncos and Bo Nix year two. What sort of leap is he gonna take? And then you want the Broncos to win this game handedly. That's what they did last year. They beat up on a lot of those crappier teams, and they kind of struggled against some of the upper echelon. But I want to see them continue that dominance. That's what they're supposed to be doing against teams like this. Huge RJ Harvey game, in my opinion. The
Huge.
explosive back, rookie back that Sean Payton went out. He got his guy.
All
I
right. All right.
expect him to force feed him in this one, especially since they're going to be winning a whole bunch. I think the Broncos win 31 to 17.
All right, moving on over to your team, the Seattle Seahawks hosting the Niners. Niners as a 2.5 point favorite on the road. Now, this is the healthiest the Niners going to be all season long. So if they need to win games, it's now. Obviously, they have a really easy schedule. We've brought that up all offseason long. And this is, theoretically one of the tougher games in their schedule, but they're playing Seattle at a good time, right? Sam Darnold's first start, reshuffling on this offensive line. Gray Zabel, he's a bum, as you said in our draft videos. So San Francisco, they do have some question marks on the defense, but bringing Robert Saleh back, a familiar voice in the room, I think they're going to cause a lot of havoc for Darnold in his first start. So I like the Niners in this one, just the continuity, head coach, quarterback, Brock Purdy on a mission this year with his guys. Really good record with CMC. So I expect CMC to have at least 6 touchdowns this game. I'm going to go Niners, let's 6 times 7, 42. Against Seattle 30.
A lot of points being scored in this one. Hopefully, Kenneth Walker can have a good game. And that's exactly what I'm expecting. I think the Seahawks team is going to establish their identity nice and early against this 49ers front seven, which is, outside of Fred Warner and Joey Bosa, or not Joe, Nick Bosa, are kind of lacking all those, depth pieces that we've expected them to have over the past couple of years. And so I think they ground and pound the rock, get the play action going with Sam Darnold. That's what he really excelled in last year. This offensive line, like you mentioned, this is everyone's healthy in this game for the Seahawks. For the 49ers, Brandon Ayuk will be coming back. Juwan Jennings with a hamstring a little bit. But for the Seahawks, their offensive line, Stone Forsythe is not there anymore. So, addition by subtraction in that point. Bowen, both your tackles, Charles Cross and Abe Lucas are out there. I really like this Kubiak zone scheme. It worked in the first 2 weeks for the Saints when they didn't have too many injuries along the offensive line. If they can get that going in Seattle, I really like this ground and pound attack that they're going to have. And for the 49ers, Brock Purdy got fat and happy with his big old contract. We'll see if he still has that same gusto in his throws this year. Especially when they're, lacking some of that depth on the outside. I think the Seahawks win a close one, 20-17.
All right. Well, Rob, if there's any better way to do it, that will conclude our full 16 game slate. But if you know us, we have one more segment to go. We have our locks, upsets, and best bets of the week. Laraib, you won the regular season and the postseason last year. So ultimately, I let you choose. Which one do you want to start with? You have the first pick.
With my first overall pick, I'm going with my upset, and my upset will be the Houston Texans against the Los Angeles Rams. I'm banking on that defense to build off of that outstanding performance from last year. Matt Stafford already banged up a little bit with that back. I think the Texans defense is the X factor, and they get the upset on the road.
All right. And my upset is the Carolina Panthers. Again, I like the identity they're trying to build through the run game. I think their defense makes some plays against this new, wonky Jaguars offense. So I think the Panthers can get it done. Familiar climate to what they've been in. It won't really affect them, the heat in Jacksonville. So I think the Panthers get the upset. And then locks of the week, Rob, I'll start with mine. It's the Cincinnati Bengals. I mentioned it. They really need to start this season off 1-0. You get a really favorable matchup against the Browns. Joe Flacco's the starting quarterback. No offensive skill players to really mention. So I think the Bengals need to get a win, and they will get a win.
Yeah, it's a solid one. With mine, I'm going to go with the Arizona Cardinals over the New Orleans Saints. I just think that this is a huge year for Jonathan Gannon as head coach. When he came in over from the Eagles after their Super Bowl run, Kyler Murray, Battlefield and Call of Duty haven't coming out yet, so
Mm.
some time left for him to lock in. And then for the Saints, I mean, when your quarterback room is comprised of Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener, and neither one of them really flashes you something in training camp, it's just a little hard to see. So I'm going to lock in the Cardinals as my lock.
It's sad. But hey, in Nuss we trust, baby. Finally, best bet of the week, Larab. Who are you feeling?
Yeah, I talked about it a little bit earlier. The Steelers and the Giants, just a game that nobody wants to watch.
The Jets.
Nobody, frankly, wants to score in either. I'm going to go under 38.5. I think that's way too many points being put on the board for these two.
Way too many points.
For these, give credit to both these defenses who are going to play well in this game, and then just offenses led by terrible quarterbacks. And so you could
Awful.
honestly give me under, 34.5, 33.5. I still would have taken that too.
I love it, Laura. I'm going with a similar trend. Offenses that we do believe in, but I just think these matchups are really rough for both. I'm going to go with the Texans Rams under 43 and a half. I just think these offensive lines have a lot to figure out. Question marks in both backfields, whether it be the running back for the Texans, the quarterback for the Rams. I just think this game is going to be really nip and tuck with two really good defenses. That's a lot of points, 43 and a half. So week one, I'm leaning on the defense. I'm going under there.
All right. Well, that is going to wrap it up for our week one predictions. Football is here.
Back,
A
baby.
great slate of games, honestly, wherever you look, minus Steelers, Jets.
Mm.
But no, we're excited. This is going to be our second upload of the week. From here on out, we will have in two episodes every week for the foreseeable future, all the way up until the Super Bowl. We are 10 subscribers away from hitting 100
Come
subscribers.
on
That would be
now.
a huge milestone for us to hit. So if you guys haven't subscribed already, go ahead, hit the red button down below.
Hello.
But without further ado, enjoy your football first week of football. And I think that's the First Goal Podcast signing off.
Peace.